I began to drink at the age of 12. Probably my earliest memories are being at large friends and family parties with neighbors where everyone was drinking, whether it was to actually celebrate something or celebrate the end of harvest or someone's birthday or of a holiday, and everyone was actively drinking. So a lot of the children seemed to sneak away, and none of the adults actually realized it either. And we would sneak everything from beers to bourbon to shots of Goldschlager and things like that, and not realizing what it would do to us. We just saw the adults having fun, so we wanted to have fun too. That was the first time I ever felt complete relief. And as being a very anxious child and being around a pretty always angry father, perfectionist situation in a really high stress environment on the farm, there was a lot of tense moments and a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, and the alcohol was the first time that I really genuinely felt this wave of calm over me. All through college, it was also something that I just did, and it's where I found those party people and really, really enjoyed letting loose. And I did not realize until probably into my late 20s, as I began to experience the worst anxiety ever with my business becoming busier and my agency really, really growing and being successful, it became the release. And coming out of a stressful meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that was the first thing I would do, was grab a drink. I began to think about how soon I could get a drink. Then I began to think about if we could have drinks at lunch, and then set rules for myself like, okay, I'm not going to drink until lunch, but 11 o'clock is technically lunch. But none of this I actually realized was a problem until I began to slowly not be able to remember what I said in meetings, or not remember that I had a meeting, or not be able sometimes to get up to go to work. The hangovers in my 30s became so severe, and the heartburn and the joint pain and the bloating and the just all-out sweats and just being red-faced just were all the time, whether I was or wasn't drinking. I thought I should join a gym, and I thought I should eat clean, and I thought I should just drink vodka because it was healthier. And it was still fueling the panic attacks, and I was still feeling the joint pain, but the drinking ramped up even more at that point. I started to find myself in situations where I would get blackout drunk. I wouldn't remember coming home. Then my children began to say things, and my youngest began to cry and asked me to stop. And those were the hardest days for sure. Absolutely the hardest days, when your 10-year-old is crying on the steps while you're so hungover you can barely get out of bed, begging you to just stop drinking because you didn't answer his call last night and he needed you because his stomach hurt. And I just realized that I wasn't going to live much longer at the pace that I was going in. The more I tried to control it, the more it controlled me. And it was a really, really, really scary time. I reached out randomly to a former professor friend of mine who told me she was in recovery months before. She just casually mentioned that she had joined AA over a lunch, and she immediately came to me. We actually met right here, right in this room, and she brought books. She showed me the link to AA meetings. I ended up reading some of the books and really, really resonating with some of these memoirs, some of the Quit Lit, and hearing other people's stories and other people's struggles and feeling just a little less crazy and maybe a little more normal. And clicking on my very first Zoom for an AA meeting, and I cried through the whole meeting, and I wasn't able to speak. I wasn't able to say anything, but they were so kind and so gentle. And every story they shared, I resonated with. Even though it wasn't my story or even somebody that looked like me, there was a thread of commonality that I'd really, really knew right then this is my thing. Then it just got a little bit easier and a little bit better. And then it would get hard again, but I would have those meetings and I would have the people I've met in those meetings. And now my online recovery group is everything to me. And I know no matter what, I've got them right in my pocket if I need help. From messaging them to hopping on a meeting to sharing in a meeting to writing on their forum, that I've made this my number one priority. It's no longer a side project. One thing that I would tell anyone that's on their own journey, of course, is that you're not alone. We all are going through stuff, and we are all struggling and suffering, and that you don't need to numb from it, that it's okay to let down your guard and to surrender. I really think of some of the early days when it was so hard and it felt so impossible, that I really began to learn that I'm enough. Right here, right now, who I am, where I stand, where my feet are on this ground, really, really is enough. And at the end of the day, I really just hang on to those words that I'm enough right here, right now. And you are too.